And you're getting a little preview of how dicey your job is going to be with the president's announcement, like 18 hours before you came up here. So I can imagine your poor staff, their briefs changed from last night to today. I think anyone who's coming up here to take an important position like the head of Stratcom in charge of 41,000 people, it's an extremely big deal. Out of a military of 1.3 million people, we only have 38 four-star generals. I think it's a very rare thing to be a four-star in the U.S. military. And it's hard to notice that we are losing 4 stars, 3 stars, and even 2 stars in a pretty unusual way over the last 9 months. Just in those months, we have lost the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, Chief of Naval Operations, Commander of Cybercom and Director of NSA, Commander of Southcom, Commandant of the Coast Guard, the SMA to the SecDef, the Director of DIA, Naval Special Warfare Commander, the top Army lawyer, the top Air Force lawyer, representative to NATO, the Joint Staff Director for J5, the Joint Staff J3, and the Chief of Naval Research. By my count, that is 17 GOFOs, general officers, who have been removed from their positions or retired early in 9 months. I'm a former CIA officer, so we used to look at other foreign militaries and make assessments on them. If I saw 17 general officers removed from their positions in a foreign military, we would call that a purge. That's the technical definition when a new leader comes in and just cleans house. The places where we've looked at these kinds of things are places like China, right, where they remove large numbers of officers at one time. I used to work on Iraq. They would do the same thing. It is very clear that the Secretary of Defense is trying to reshape the department in ways that are very different than previous administrations, and he is critical of anyone who takes issue with him, his leadership, or decision-making of him or the president. Now, you've repeated many times, rightly, that your job will be to give best military advice, but what we are seeing over and over in black and white is that when people in similar positions give their best military advice, they get removed. If that military advice is somehow not in line with the thinking of this president and the secretary, you get fired. So there's going to come a moment. I don't know when it's going to be. I hope you never have it, but there will be a moment behind closed doors, not when the lights are on and the hearings going on, when you will have that really existential decision you will have to make. Do I give my best military advice and tell people news they don't want to hear, information they don't want to hear, or will I just go along to get along to make sure that my bosses are happy and I don't rock the boat? You swore an oath over and over your whole career to the Constitution, not to any one man, not to one president, but to the Constitution of the United States. So can you say with conviction, when your moment comes, because it's coming, you're behind closed doors and you have that moral and professional obligation to make, that you, at risk, knowing that your job is at risk, you will say the right and best military advice based on facts and not just what Secretary Hegseth wants you to say?
Senator, over the course of my career, I've adhered to that principle, and I will adhere to that principle going forward, consistent with my oath to the Constitution.
Well, we are counting on it, and we've had every single nominee come up and say the same thing. I've asked this question to pretty much every single nominee that's come up before me. But those moments are happening, and I think we can see just by the sheer number, 17 general officers removed in 9 months, that you will have that career-defining moment. And because your job involves nuclear weapons, there couldn't be a more important set of issues to work on when it comes to sort of moral decision-making. We are counting on you. The young folks who work for you, those 41,000 people, are counting on you to make the right decision when the doors are closed. So Thank you, and I encourage you all of Godspeed.
At a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing on Thursday, Senator Elissa Slotkin, Democrat Michigan, delivered a pointed critique of what she described as a disturbing trend within the Department of Defense: the removal of senior military leaders who have offered dissenting or independent advice to civilian leadership. Speaking to a nominee for head of U.S. Strategic Command, STRATCOM, Slotkin congratulated the nominee on the prestigious election but noted that the timing of the hearing, coming less than a day after a major presidential announcement, highlighted how politically charged and volatile the environment had become for the nation's top military officers. Slotkin began by emphasizing the gravity of the position the nominee was seeking. The head of STRATCOM oversees more than 41,000 personnel and plays a central role in managing the United States nuclear deterrent. She noted that only 38 four-star officers serve in a military force of over 1.3 million people, making such positions both rare and deeply consequential. But she warned that the current climate in Washington had made those roles precarious, especially for leaders willing to speak truth to power. Citing data she had compiled, Slotkin pointed out that 17 general officers had been removed from their posts or forced into early retirement over just 9 months, an unprecedented rate of turnover. The list included the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the chiefs of the Air Force and Navy, senior intelligence and cyber commanders, and the heads of the Coast Guard and Southern Command. She argued that if such an event were occurring in another country, analysts would describe it as a purge. As a former CIA officer, Slotkin said she had personally studied similar purges in nations like China and Iraq, where new leaders removed large numbers of officers to consolidate loyalty and eliminate dissent. Slotkin accused Secretary of War Pete Hegseth of orchestrating a similar effort inside the Pentagon, systematically sidelining or ousting those who challenged his decisions or disagreed with the direction of the administration. She suggested that both Hegseth and former President Donald Trump were intent on reshaping the military's leadership ranks to ensure compliance rather than honest counsel. It's very clear, she said, that the Secretary of Defense is trying to reshape the department in ways that punish disagreement and reward obedience. Turning to the nominee, Slotkin urged them to resist political pressure and maintain fidelity to the Constitution above all else. She predicted that a defining moment would come, likely behind closed doors, when the nominee would face a choice between giving their best professional advice or saying what superiors wanted to hear. That moment will come, she said firmly. You will have to decide whether to risk your job to tell the truth or to protect yourself by going along. The senator reminded the nominee that every officer's oath is sworn to the U.S. Constitution, not to any president, secretary, or political leader. She acknowledged that such integrity often comes at a professional cost but argued that it is the foundation of American military ethics and civilian military trust. With STRATCOM's authority extending over nuclear weapons and global deterrence, she said the stakes of moral courage could not be higher. Slotkin's remarks underscored growing concerns within Congress about politicization at the highest levels of the Pentagon. Several lawmakers have expressed unease that officers are being removed not for misconduct or poor performance, but for offering advice that contradicts the political priorities of the administration. Slotkin framed this trend as a direct threat to the principle of an apolitical, professional military that serves the nation rather than individual leaders. She concluded her statement by expressing confidence in the nominee's record of service and urging them to be guided by duty, facts, and conscience in moments of pressure. "We are counting on you," Slotkin said, referring not only to Congress but also to the 41,000 personnel under STRATCOM's command. "Those young people are counting on you to make the right decision when the doors are closed and no one else is watching." Slotkin closed by wishing the nominee good luck and invoking a sense of faith and moral strength. "Godspeed," she said. "You'll need it."